Hi everybody, welcome to 5 Minute Ministries. Now, in the 80s and even before, men on television were portrayed in a very, very positive light. They were seen as leaders, they were seen as fathers, they were seen as husbands, they were seen as bosses, they were seen as very good role models, the men to look up to. And that was what people were trying to focus on at the time. They wanted men to step up, be who they are supposed to be. Well, in the late 90s or in the late 80s and early 90s, a couple of characters showed up on our TV screens, and they were the complete opposite of what the previous sitcom men were, the previous television men were, excuse me. And those characters became very popular. Those characters were portrayed as fools, as lazy, as not very good fathers, not very good husbands, and not very good leaders or bosses. They were seen as complete imbeciles. But that portrayal has taken off. And throughout the 90s, that's how men were portrayed on television a lot of times. They were portrayed as the fools, as the men you could not count on, as the ones who always messed up something. And then someone else had to come in and rescue him, usually his wife, and sometimes even the kids were smarter than him. And unfortunately, it did not stay on our small TV screens. It blew into other types of media. And the other types followed suit. They were focusing on how stupid men were. But it didn't stay in our media. It fanned out even into society. And society started treating men like the men they saw on television. Now, some may say, well, men were always like that. Well, I don't think so. But it gave men an excuse, and a lot of men became those very men because of the way they were treated. And unfortunately, we still see those effects today. Even in the 2020s, we see that men are portrayed in a very poor light, and that somehow women are superior to men. Somehow they're smarter. They can do anything a man can do, only better. Now, I've even had this experience myself when my kids were little in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, something like that. I was working at a Christian school, of all places, and it was time for me to leave. I said, well, I need to go home and tend to my kids. And a woman tells me, oh, we know what that means. I said, oh, really? What does it mean? She said, it means you're going to go home, lay on the couch, watch TV, and fall asleep while the kids run around and do whatever they want and cause trouble. I said, well, I'm sorry if that's the way your husband is, but I'm going to go home and spend time with my children. I'm going to play with them. I'm going to teach them. I'm going to be their father. And women are shocked when they see a husband and father being a husband and father. There's a whole lot of trouble with that these days, and I wanted to try to encourage men. Men have been bashed over the head enough with how they should be, who they should be, what they should be doing. But I want to take a biblical perspective of manhood, not just fathers and husbands, but men in general. I will touch on husbands and fathers because that's a big important part. But I wanted men to be encouraged by what the Bible says about who we are and what we should be. And I want them to see themselves in a positive way, in the way that God sees them. Sure, the Bible has a high standard for men, but He also gives us His Spirit to meet those standards. He gives us His Word to meet the standards. Now, we can't do it perfectly, of course, and we never will. He knows that. But He will see that if we are obedient, and He sees our efforts, He will bless us, and He will make us into good, godly men. And that's what this series is going to focus on. Now, I know I did a series with women, and that's what I tried to do with them. But men, we need to be godly too. We can't just sit on the sidelines and let our women do everything. We are called to be the leaders. And I'll get into all that as we go through this series. This has been 5 Minute Ministries, and I'll see you next time.